This week, Conflict Zone is in Brussels to speak to Gilles de Kerchove, the European Union's Counter-Terrorism Coordinator. In the latest spate of terrorist violence, 12 people were killed in Barcelona in mid-August. With thousands of jihadists living on European soil posing an imminent threat, is Europe doing enough? Mr. de Kerchove, welcome to Conflict Zone.
Thank you.
EU member states reported in 2016 that 142, I repeat, 142 victims died in terrorist attacks and 379 people were injured. 2017 is not over yet, but the numbers will be higher. This is dramatic.
This is huge, I do agree, and very sad. Does it mean that we have failed? I wouldn't reach that conclusion.
I think 142 people and their families would say you failed.
And rightly so. No, rightly so. But we prevented other plots. Foiled plots and arrest people who were planning more.
But not enough, because regardless, whatever you prevented it, never before in the last years we had so many people who died because of terrorist attacks.
But this is true, so I have to accept the harsh criticism that we should have avoided that, so we need to fix it and even improve further.
The position you are holding as the EU Counter-Terror Coordinator was created as the result of the Madrid terror attack in 2004. Here we are in 2017 after another big attack in Spain. 13 years later, Europe continues to live in fear, even more than ever before.
It's true in a way, because the threat of terrorism has not reduced. We've seen the rise of an organization beside Al-Qaeda, Daesh, with franchises and affiliated groups in several parts of the world. There are many more people attracted by this ideology, and so it is a concern indeed. And it just reinforced the point that the threat is first serious, but much more complex than it was before, because we have at the same time lone actors, which are not necessarily linked to Daesh with Syria and Iraq, operating by themselves and using a pretty banal weapon like a car or a knife.
It's not a banal weapon. This happened in Israel and other countries years ago when Europe didn't understand what happened there.
Yeah, and no, we tend to look at this because of what it happened.
Europe started to look at this on the time when it happens here.
Indeed, on cars, on the use of cars.
Yes. Yeah. For example, also but the knives are not something very new.
No, but you will never prevent someone leaving his apartment, taking a knife in the kitchen and kill someone in the street. I'm sorry, you have to detect the person much earlier, and that's the work which has been undertaken for years on training better community police officers, using more and more now sophisticated software to spot weak signals. So when is it that someone gets radicalized and reach the tipping point where he will use violence?
But it looks like that the terrorists are quicker and more effective in the last years in Europe than the security institutions are to prevent it. And these are facts. Look, Europe is under attack and the EU does not have a good answer or a better answer to this threat.
I acknowledge that we need to improve, but I wouldn't draw the conclusions that Europe hasn't done anything. As I've said before, very sadly, many attacks have been prevented, many plots have been foiled. But of course, some have succeeded. There is very sadly enough nothing like 100% security, but we have improved a lot and reduced our vulnerabilities.
With all due respect, this sentence, we don't have 100% security, is a sentence I'm listening every time when a terror attack happens. Nobody is asking 100%, but it doesn't look that the situation of the European police institutions and intelligence is helping that the attacks are going back less successful.
I think we have to first see that Daesh is not winning the long-term goal they have so far. The physical caliphate is collapsing, so the anti-ISIL coalition managed now to destroy the physical caliphate.
So let's take, for example, the attackers in Barcelona. They follow a trend very well known also by your work. They were organized by a radical imam of North African origins, this time a Moroccan, who was known, and that's the important point, who was known by the police. And this is a repeating pattern.
I don't have all the details, and the investigation will tell us more on what went wrong. But that is precisely the current challenge: is to be better at spotting weak signals, because all the experts have shown that now the most radical people are using what they call taqiyya, dissimulation, so as to operate below the radar. So this is now the big challenge for the security services and the police, is to be better at analyzing. It's not just a question of exchange of data, because in many instances, as you suggest, the data was available, but it's more to make the right assessment of the tipping point when the person will use violence. And this remains a challenge.
We can summarize, this was a failure, but there is another thing which is very interesting with the terrorist act just now in Spain. Spain was informed about a possible terrorist act, also in Barcelona, also in the place where it happened. This attack could have been prevented if the Spanish security forces wouldn't have decided, you know what, this information is not something we have to react on. So what is the reason to inform each other when at the end of the day we have a terrorist act with a lot of people who died?
We will learn from the Spaniards who are currently investigating what went wrong.
But I want to speak about, because the Minister of Interior Affairs said that it's true, they were informed. We have to talk about this concrete thing, because the population
They were informed by the CIA, that's what you mean?
No, I don't know from whom. But that it happened, that the Spanish security forces got this information in May, this is now a fact.
Like you, I've read that in the newspapers that the CIA might have warned.
I don't talk about the CIA, I said that he was informed.
But as I understand, because I don't have all the detail, the initial plan was not to target people in the street with a car, but more to have explosive to blow up the basilica.
So what? Barcelona and the place was known. They didn't take it as seriously as you have to, because perhaps the trust with all these organizations, also your organization, is that the cooperation and the trust in the information is not high enough.
I wouldn't say the trust is not there, that our services are not effective. I won't agree with this. As I said, I have not enough detail on what went wrong to draw, like you, such bluntly, the conclusion that it was a big mistake.
But you have the information that he was informed. This is a hard
fact. That's what you say. That's what you say, and maybe they took some measures that I'm not aware of. It's not my role to assess exactly, or to
It's not your role. You are the coordinator. You are the man for Europe.
I'll tell you my role.
That's not your role.
My role is to learn from not only successes, but mistakes, and recommend policy advice.
10 years you are learning, and things like that are still happening.
Will most likely happen again, I'm afraid. Yeah.
There's been a lot of hope last year that the launch of the ECTC will change things. Europol said in January 2016 that the launch was organized with 39 staff members and 5 national experts. 16. Less than 50 people processing intelligence to secure 500 million Europeans? 50 people?
Yeah.
That's it?
Let me explain. The EU is not the prime responsible for internal security. Member states are the prime responsible. The treaty has been drafted accordingly, and member states are the solely responsible for intelligence. So that's the decision of the member states. I have to operate in a legal context, the treaties, and that's the role of the European Union is to support the member states by providing data.
Employees, starting with 50 for the European Union, for these states, more than 25. That's all?
It's not 50. You have an
So how many
agency
are there
with
today?
1,000 people at
No,
Europol.
the European Counter-Terrorism Center, how many are you? In your...
When Europol cross data on crime and data on terrorism, you have to look at the people who are working on the analysis of the data, the collection, the treatment of data in a different department. It's a single agency with a single management and integrated policy.
Would you say that you need more human resources?
Europol asks for more, indeed. And I'm in favor of adding resource, yes.
How many? 200%, 500% more?
I hear first the need expressed by the people in charge. Europol has a director, if I'm not misled, he has, and gets from the Commission additional resource. And I'm confident that they will receive this additional resource, but it's not moving from 50 or 60 to 500. It's not the point.
Would you agree that this is one of the most important questions in Europe? A special survey from April 16 showed majority of Europeans feel like, quote, that EU action is largely insufficient and they would like to have the EU to intervene more. So what's stopping Brussels from doing that?
Brussels is very forthcoming, I'm sorry, because precisely the starting point in the treaty is that we were and we are in support of the member states because of what you just suggested, that 82% of the citizens would like to see more Europe in the field of security. We are investing a lot. The President of the Commission launched the idea of a security union. If you think of the monetary union, it's full of a very ambitious project. He appointed a full-time commissioner, Julian King, who is monitoring the implementation of the security union. And we have developed a lot of new policies, adopted a lot of legislation, supported a lot of effort in the member states to collect passenger name record information.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Let's talk about the example, the passenger name record that you advocate for. The proposal was considered initially in 2011, 6 years ago, and we are now hoping it will be implemented by May 18. 7 years later, 7 years, and we are speaking about security, we are speaking about terrorism, we are speaking about a threat and the fear of millions of Europeans.
I fully share your concern. It's the consequence of a difficult negotiation with the European Parliament, where many members, elected members of Parliament, were worried by the impact on privacy, and insisted on adding a lot of safeguards in terms of data protection. And eventually, we managed to reach a consensus. There is, and the Court of Justice, in recent, sometimes worrying decision, have squashed some of our measures because they believe that it was breaching privacy.
And so Europe is too slow or will never be efficient enough to fight against this, what we are saying, terror.
The institutions are keen to strike the balance right between privacy and security, and we don't want to rush to become a big brother society, and therefore that takes time. This sort of discussion takes time.
But we are partly a big brother society. A lot of information in different countries are saved in a different way. Take Germany with a very high level and other countries who don't have this level.
No, the European Parliament and the Council adopted recently two legislation on data protection. I must say the level of protection in Europe is probably the highest in the world, and member states companies, private companies, and law enforcement agencies will have to abide by these rules. So it is untrue to say that there are discrepancies.
No, you just said that there is in the relationship of others who are even less taking important about civil and other rights, the attention that Europe is the best, but it's not because it is the best on the highest level of protection of civil rights. But let's talk now about the defeat of ISIS. It seems, you just mentioned it, it is a good news that in Iraq and Syria there are a lot of defeats of ISIS. But the bad news for Europe is less war, more terrorism in Europe. Would you agree?
First, we have to finish the war, if you call it like this, and dismantle completely the caliphate. And neutralize all the members of Daesh, but not just Daesh. It would be a mistake to overlook Al-Qaeda or Ayat Tahrir al-Sham, ex-Jabhat al-Nusra, the franchise of Al-Qaeda. But we have to win the peace, and that's another challenge. We have to ensure that the Sunnis, who were supporting Daesh in a way, do feel well, both in Iraq and in Syria. And that's part of the challenge as well.
But that's not the only places where jihadists or other terrorists are growing. How many returning jihadists do we have now, 2017 in Europe?
I don't have an exact figure, but very few. We, at some stage, we're afraid to see a massive return. And it's not what is happening for several reasons. First, because it's no longer possible to cross the border with Turkey as easily as it was before. The organization is killing the defectors. And you said yourself, it's a war, an ugly war, and many of the fighters are killed. So for the time being...
many came back. How many do you think are in Europe?
Let's say a third, I think, of the 5,000 who went there have probably already returned.
You know that 50 are enough to destroy the security of a country like France or Germany. So how do you monitor these 5,000 people who are a danger for our security?
First, you need to spot them when they try to come back, so at the external border. And that's why we have improved significantly the check at the external border by imposing a systematic check on EU citizens.
Yeah, but you know that they are clever enough, some of them.
Yeah, but if we were not doing it, you would criticize it.
So 5,000
you have to acknowledge that we took some quite tough decision. It was not an easy decision to impose on EU citizens to be controlled when they cross the external border. We did. We changed the Schengen code. We have now improved a lot the way we perform the security check at the external border, especially with the migration flow.
To come back to Europe?
Should
we allow even these jihadists to come back into the European Union?
In principle, yes, because a German citizen has a right to come back, but it's up to the German authority to stop them and start prosecuting them, provided they have the right evidence.
Ban the entry of some and even revoke their citizenship when possible. Do you support the idea?
It has been discussed in several member states, but it seems that according to international law, you cannot strip someone from his citizenship if he has only one citizenship.
We know now that even if and when ISIS is defeated, its ideology, the sentiment it's provoked, they keep on living online. You refer to it as, quote, the rise of the virtual caliphate. What are you doing to fight in order to this?
We've been very active. The Commission set up a public-private partnership with the big internet companies at the request of the member states, to explore how to improve the removal of unlawful content quickly and as much as possible. And we have there achieved quite significant results. We have set up at Europol an internet referral unit, which so far has flagged more than 30,000 unlawful content, 90% more of the time. Do you really
believe you can control the digital sphere?
Wait, let me finish. We have removed 90% of what has been flagged to the companies, and we put a lot of pressure on them so that they developed algorithms to detect in an automated way the unlawful content. 70% of what Twitter is removing is now done on
an automated way. Terrorists are not only working on Twitter, they are working in the digital world with elements we even don't know. One very concrete question. Germany just now, for example, announced it wants to extend border controls beyond November, something the Commission is not supporting. Is Germany right to close the borders?
Where?
Schengen, in Germany, Germany borders.
But the member states have the right to reestablish on a temporary basis internal border control, but it should not be the rule and forever.
Okay.
That's the rule.
Let's talk about another threat, the Balkans. How concerned are you about what is happening there in terms of radicalization and support for terror?
We are engaged with the Western Balkan states. I was recently...
Concerned? Very concerned?
They themselves are concerned.
Are you concerned and very concerned?
Not very concerned, but we have to work together because they too, nearly 1,000 of their citizens, mainly coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, from the former Republic of Macedonia, and Kosovo have been joining Daesh.
So what are you doing against that? What are you doing to improve the situation with the Balkans?
So they are engaged in an accession process. So we help them to implement the EU acquis in terms of border management. We train them. We provide them with equipment. We've helped them to draft the necessary legislation.
Yeah, we have. I understand that we have, but time is running out. And a report from Europol only last year, talked about, I quote, a radical Islamist ideology promoted by radical preachers or leaders of some Salafist groups in some parts of the Western Balkan region. This is in your own backyard. This is Europe.
That's why I told you that.
And we have. What did you do?
But I said they know, all of them have now a legislation making it a crime to go to Syria and Iraq, which they had not before. So you have to go through parliament. These are democracy. We are training the police and we are setting up mechanisms so that they exchange among themselves and with Europol. Most of them, except I think one, have an operational agreement with Europol. I'm sorry, but that means something. That means they share their data with Europol, that we get their data as well. We are helping them on the prevention of radicalization, addressing the issue of the ideology, trying to stop radical imam propagating their ideology. So all these are concrete steps. It's not just talks. We are working together.
But we know, for example, that ammunitions and weapons from the Balkans are used, for example, in Charlie Hebdo and Paris Bataclan attacks. What can we do more to combat these illegal weapons entering to Europe?
It's a very good point. The remains of the Balkan War, millions of arms still available, and I do agree it's a concern. That's why we've improved, again, our legislation. We have adopted a new legislation on the trafficking in arms. Europol has concrete operations in the Western Balkans with the Western Balkan states. But may I raise one aspect? I wouldn't say the positive aspect, but why is it that in Barcelona they use knives and they didn't succeed in weaponize the TATP explosive? And why did the house blow up? You may ask yourself, is it a consequence of the measures that we have taken? That it's not that easy to get access to.
Have a variety.
Yeah, but that's an easy answer. I'm sorry. It may be. You may say it could be a consequence of the measures that we have taken.
Could.
We make it more difficult for people to get access to weapons. So we have to look at all sides.
But still, at the Balkans, you have so many weapons that you can destroy, by terrorist acts, a lot of societies.
It is true. We are working with each and every member of the Western Balkan states to find ways to dry up the market, the illegal market of firearms.
Let's talk about Brexit. This is coming at a very sensitive and crucial times in terms of security, is it?
It is. It's a bit early to discuss the way we will work with our British friends after Brexit, because we want first to make progress in the divorce.
Doesn't look like. will be a very hard divorce,
No, it would,
not very friendly.
Hopefully, I'm not in charge of that. But it's clear that on both sides there is a wish to keep a very close relationship.
Yes, but it will not be the same as being a member. If you are in the club, there is another relationship. So what will be the consequence for security reasons in Europe, taking in consideration that the Britons are very important in intelligence and police?
They are excellent. It's one of the member states which supported me the most over the years. But we will develop with the Brits what we are developing with the Americans, a very intimate and very close relationship.
But it's not the same. You are in the family or yourself.
They won't sit at the management board of Europol, probably no. But at the same time, nothing prevents us from...
Will it be worse from your experience and point of...
I don't believe so. And first, let me tell you that as intelligence falls outside EU competence, nothing changed in the remit of intelligence exchange.
Mr. de Kerchove, thank you very much for coming to Conflict Zone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.